Look at your life, really look at it. Not the story you tell others, not the version you post online, but the quiet truth you feel when you're alone. If something feels heavy, chaotic, or painfully stagnant, it's not because the world is unfair. It's because there is something you are avoiding. And the most dangerous thing a human being can do is lie to themselves long enough that the lie starts to feel like truth. If you're brave enough to listen, this message might change the direction of your life. Responsibility is the dividing line between a life that merely reacts and a life that deliberately moves forward. When you accept responsibility, you are not declaring that everything bad that happened to you was your fault. That is a misunderstanding that keeps people trapped. Responsibility means recognizing that, regardless of how unfair or painful your starting point was, you are the one who must now decide what happens next. Without that acceptance, you remain psychologically dependent on circumstances, people, and excuses. The mind begins to search for external enemies because doing so feels easier than facing the terrifying truth that your future largely depends on your choices. Many people secretly avoid responsibility because it exposes their potential. If you are responsible, then improvement is possible, but so is failure. Blame protects the ego. It allows you to say, I could have been more if only the world were different. Responsibility removes that comforting illusion. It forces you to confront the gap between who you are and who you could become. That confrontation is painful, but it is also the birthplace of strength. The moment you say, this is on me, you shift from being a victim of life to being an active participant in it. Taking responsibility also brings order to chaos. When life feels overwhelming, it's often because responsibility is scattered everywhere except where it belongs. You wait for motivation, perfect conditions, or someone else's approval before acting, but motivation follows action, not the other way around. Responsibility anchors you in reality. It pushes you to do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. That discipline stabilizes your emotions because your life is no longer governed by impulse or mood. There is also a moral dimension to responsibility that people often ignore. When you fail to take responsibility for your own life, you unconsciously pass the cost of your failure onto others, your family, your friends, or society. Resentment grows because deep down you know you are not carrying your weight. Responsibility, then, is not just self-improvement, it is a form of respect for others. It is saying, I will not become a burden that chaos can use against the people I care about. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of responsibility is that it gives suffering meaning. Life will bring pain regardless of your choices. The difference is whether that pain is wasted or refined into something valuable. When you take responsibility, suffering becomes a teacher rather than a sentence. You learn, adapt, and grow stronger. Without responsibility, suffering only produces bitterness. With it, suffering becomes the raw material from which character is built. Ultimately, responsibility is empowering because it restores agency. It reminds you that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can control how you respond. That realization is the foundation of confidence, resilience, and self-respect. And without those, no amount of talent, intelligence, or opportunity will ever be enough. Speaking the truth is one of the hardest things a person can do because it forces them to confront not only the world around them, but also the world inside them. Most people lie, even in small ways, to avoid discomfort. They tell themselves they are protecting others, maintaining peace, or avoiding conflict. But each lie, no matter how minor, carries a hidden cost. It chips away at your clarity, your integrity, and your ability to understand reality as it truly is. The human mind is not designed to hold contradictions for long, and the more you lie, the more you distort your perception of yourself and your circumstances. Eventually, those distortions shape your habits, decisions, and relationships in ways that feel unmanageable, chaotic, or meaningless. Speaking the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is the antidote to that chaos. It clears the fog and allows you to act deliberately rather than react blindly. Speaking the truth requires courage because the immediate consequences often feel unpleasant. People may get angry, disappointed, or defensive. You may face criticism, rejection, or social discomfort. But avoiding truth is a temporary shield that leads to long-term vulnerability. By contrast, speaking honestly creates a foundation that is strong and durable. Clear communication aligns reality with perception, and alignment is where power resides. You begin to see problems for what they are rather than what you wish them to be. You see opportunities rather than illusions. You understand your own strengths and weaknesses without distortion. That clarity is invaluable because it informs every decision, every action, and every relationship. Moreover, truth speaking is not only about external communication, it is about internal honesty. Most people spend their lives lying to themselves in ways that are subtle and insidious. They ignore their own desires, rationalize bad habits, or pretend they are satisfied when they are not. Self-deception is the quietest, most destructive lie of all. It builds a life on shifting sands, and no external success can stabilize it. Confronting yourself with brutal honesty requires reflection, discipline, and sometimes humility, but it is the only way to grow. When your internal world is truthful, your external world follows naturally. You no longer chase illusions or settle for mediocrity because you see clearly what is truly valuable. Finally, speaking the truth fosters trust and respect in relationships. People instinctively recognize honesty, even when it stings. They gravitate toward those who are genuine because honesty is rare. Relationships built on truth are resilient because they do not rely on pretense or manipulation. Even when conflicts arise, clarity and directness allow resolution and understanding. Lies, however small, create tension, resentment, and confusion. Over time, those small lies compound until relationships break down entirely. Speaking truth, in short, is not just a moral choice. It is a practical strategy for building a life that is strong, ordered, and meaningful. Aiming at something meaningful rather than what is easy is one of the defining differences between those who drift through life and those who live with purpose. Most people chase comfort, convenience, or fleeting pleasure, mistaking them for happiness. They measure success by how effortless something seems or how quickly it brings satisfaction. But life rarely rewards what is easy. Challenges, resistance, and suffering are inevitable, and if your goal is shallow, any difficulty becomes unbearable. When you aim only for what is easy, you abandon growth, and without growth, even success feels hollow. Meaningful goals, on the other hand, justify the struggle. They give direction to your efforts, structure to your habits, and significance to your suffering. Choosing meaningful goals requires clarity about what truly matters to you, not what society, family, or friends insist should matter. It demands courage because meaningful objectives almost always involve risk, sacrifice, and prolonged effort. They often push you into discomfort and force you to confront your weaknesses, but that is exactly why they matter. Pain, when connected to purpose, is transformed from a burden into a tool for refinement. You learn more about yourself in the process than you ever could from avoiding struggle. The challenge tests your discipline, sharpens your focus, and teaches resilience. Without a meaningful aim, you drift, reacting to events rather than shaping your own path, and you leave your potential untapped. Meaningful goals also align your actions with long-term satisfaction rather than short-term pleasure. Instant gratification is seductive because it gives immediate feedback, a dopamine hit, a small sense of accomplishment, a temporary feeling of relief. But those fleeting rewards rarely build a life worth living. Meaning, by contrast, often requires delayed gratification. It asks you to invest time, energy, and effort into something bigger than yourself, something that might not yield immediate recognition or reward. That investment shapes your character, strengthens your discipline, and builds habits that compound over time. Eventually, the small, consistent actions toward a meaningful goal create momentum that can overcome even the most difficult obstacles. Finally, aiming at something meaningful gives your suffering purpose and context. Life will always bring pain, disappointment, and setbacks. When your goals are shallow, suffering feels like punishment, random and cruel. But when your goals are meaningful, suffering becomes a teacher and a guide. Every failure is an opportunity to learn. Every setback a chance to refine your approach, and every obstacle a test of your commitment. Without meaning, life is a series of random struggles. With meaning, life becomes a journey where every hardship contributes to growth, strength, and fulfillment. The pursuit of what matters transforms ordinary existence into something extraordinary. Cleaning up your own life first is not a trivial suggestion. It is the foundation for any meaningful change. So often people look outward, blaming society, the economy, their families, or luck for the chaos in their lives. They assume that if the external world could just be fixed, then they would be happy, successful, or fulfilled. But until you take responsibility for the space you occupy, the decisions you make, and the habits you cultivate, external change will never feel enough. Order begins with small, tangible actions, actions that may seem insignificant in isolation but accumulate into momentum. Cleaning, Your room, organizing your schedule, or repairing a strained relationship are acts that assert control over your immediate environment. They are symbolic and practical steps that demonstrate to yourself that change is possible. The principle behind this is simple. Life is complex, but you can only influence what you directly control. When your own environment is messy, your mind mirrors it. Disorder breeds distraction, indecision, and emotional instability. Your focus scatters, your energy dissipates, and anxiety fills the gaps left by neglect. By taking small steps to bring order to your immediate life, you create a stable platform from which larger, more ambitious goals can be pursued. The process is cumulative. Cleaning one corner of your world leads to clarity in thought, which leads to better decisions, which leads to greater control over larger areas of your life. It is the microcosm principle. The small becomes the seed for the large. Furthermore, cleaning up your own life demonstrates integrity and commitment to yourself. It is easy to speak about dreams, ambitions, and ideals, but without tangible action, they remain abstract and hollow. Repairing the small details shows that you are serious, disciplined, and capable. It signals that you do not rely on excuses or external circumstances to define the quality of your life. This kind of self-respect and personal accountability sets the tone for how others perceive you too. People are naturally drawn to those who have demonstrated the ability to take care of their own domain because such individuals are reliable, trustworthy, and grounded. The psychological impact of cleaning up your own life is profound. Every completed task, no matter how small, reinforces your sense of agency and competence. It combats the creeping helplessness that so many people experience when life feels overwhelming. Order, even in the smallest form, is a rebellion against chaos and a declaration of personal sovereignty. When you take charge of your immediate surroundings, you are also taking charge of your mindset. You are telling yourself that you are capable of improvement, that you can create structure, and that you can confront the messiness of life rather than surrender to it. This mindset becomes the foundation for all other growth, because no meaningful achievement can be built on a shaky, disorganized base. Comparing yourself to who you were yesterday is one of the most overlooked strategies for growth, yet it is also one of the most powerful. Most people measure their worth by comparing themselves to others, people who seem smarter, wealthier, or more successful. Social media has intensified this problem, offering constant snapshots of curated lives that make it seem like everyone else has it all figured out. But these comparisons are meaningless because they ignore the unique circumstances, struggles, and starting points of each individual. When you focus on others, you place your self-esteem in the hands of factors beyond your control, creating envy, resentment, and a sense of inadequacy. The only fair comparison is with yourself, because the only person whose path you truly influence is your own. Looking at your past self provides an honest benchmark. It allows you to measure progress in tangible ways, even if the steps seem small. Did you act with more discipline today than yesterday? Did you confront a fear instead of avoiding it? Did you take responsibility for one more aspect of your life? These are the victories that matter because they accumulate into momentum over time. Small, consistent improvements compound in ways that are almost imperceptible day by day but become life-altering over months and years. This kind of progress is deeply empowering because it is fully within your control. You don't rely on luck, circumstances, or the achievements of others to feel competent or motivated. Comparing yourself to who you were yesterday also fosters resilience. Life will inevitably involve setbacks, failures, and unexpected challenges. If you measure yourself against someone else's success, any failure can feel catastrophic. You will question your worth and feel defeated. But if your metric is improvement over your past self, setbacks become opportunities to learn and grow. Even a minor adjustment in behavior, a slightly better decision, or a small act of courage counts as progress. This perspective transforms challenges from threats into stepping stones, because each experience is measured against the baseline of your own abilities, not someone else's. This approach also encourages patience, discipline, and humility. Real growth rarely happens overnight. It is a gradual accumulation of consistent effort, reflection, and adjustment. By focusing on yourself, you avoid the trap of instant gratification and the pressure to achieve dramatic results immediately. You learn to value incremental improvements, knowing that they are building something enduring. Over time, comparing yourself to your past self nurtures self-respect, confidence, and clarity of purpose. You begin to understand your strengths, acknowledge your weaknesses, and recognize the real potential that lies within you. Ultimately, progress measured this way becomes a sustainable habit, a mindset, and a guiding principle for a life that is both disciplined and meaningful. Voluntary discipline is one of the most misunderstood concepts in life. Many people assume discipline is a form of restriction, something imposed externally, or a burdensome set of rules meant to limit freedom. But true discipline is the exact opposite. It is a choice you make to structure your life in a way that aligns with your goals, values, and highest potential. When you voluntarily impose order on your actions, habits, and priorities, you create a framework within which freedom can flourish. Without discipline, freedom becomes chaos, an endless cycle of impulses, distractions, and unproductive habits. Discipline is the scaffolding that allows you to build a meaningful, resilient, and self-directed life. The power of voluntary discipline lies in its ability to transform suffering into growth. Life will inevitably present challenges, disappointments, and obstacles that are beyond your control. Without discipline, these experiences can feel like arbitrary punishment, leading to frustration, resentment, or stagnation. But when you voluntarily cultivate discipline, you are training yourself to meet these challenges with resilience, clarity, and composure. You learn to endure difficulty because you understand that struggle is not meaningless. It is the medium through which growth occurs. The more you practice discipline in small, deliberate ways, whether in your daily routine, your work, or your relationships, the more resilient you become when the stakes are higher. Voluntary discipline also creates psychological freedom. This may seem paradoxical, but true freedom is not the absence of rules. It is the ability to act according to your values and long-term goals rather than your immediate impulses. When your mind and body are trained through consistent practice, self-control, and deliberate action, you are no longer a slave to distraction, temptation, or fleeting desires. You can make choices consciously rather than reactively. This mastery over yourself opens doors that would remain closed to someone whose life is ruled by habit, emotion, or circumstance. Furthermore, discipline is cumulative. The small, repeated actions you take each day compound into powerful habits and character traits. Waking up early, completing tasks fully, exercising, reading, or planning your day may seem insignificant in isolation, but over time, they shape the person you become. Discipline strengthens not only your ability to achieve external goals, but also your internal sense of integrity and self-respect. You gain confidence because you know you can rely on yourself. You gain stability because your life is structured around deliberate action rather than chaos. You gain resilience because you have practiced persistence in low-stakes situations that prepare you for higher-stakes challenges. Ultimately, voluntary discipline is a pathway to freedom, power, and fulfillment. It is the deliberate cultivation of order in a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable. It allows you to act with intention, confront obstacles with courage, and live according to your highest potential. Without discipline, freedom is fleeting and potential remains unrealized. With it, you create a life of purpose, mastery, and enduring meaning, a life in which you are truly in control. The truth is that life does not hand out meaning or success freely. Every moment presents a choice to drift in chaos or to take responsibility and act deliberately. When you accept responsibility, speak honestly, and clean up the small corners of your life, you reclaim control over your destiny. The challenges you face are not barriers designed to stop you. They are invitations to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Each step you take toward order, discipline, and truth builds momentum, and momentum compounds into transformation. Your life begins to reflect your decisions rather than your fears, and that is where real power resides. Meaning is the guiding compass that keeps you from becoming lost in the pursuit of comfort or convenience. Easy paths provide fleeting pleasure but no lasting satisfaction. Aiming at something meaningful transforms pain into growth, setbacks into lessons, and effort into legacy. When your goals demand courage, discipline, and endurance, every hardship gains purpose. Life stops being a random series of events and becomes a deliberate journey where each decision shapes not only the person you are today, but also the person you are becoming. Your suffering, when aligned with purpose, becomes your teacher rather than your tormentor. Progress is built quietly, day by day, through choices that may seem insignificant but accumulate into remarkable change. Comparing yourself only to who you were yesterday, rather than to the illusions of others, fosters resilience, patience, and self-respect. Small victories, honest reflections, and disciplined habits compound over time, creating a life that is stable, meaningful, and fully under your control. Freedom, discipline, and integrity are inseparable. They form the foundation upon which your character, relationships, and achievements stand. By acting deliberately, you transform the ordinary into something extraordinary. Ultimately, the advice shared here is not about shortcuts or temporary motivation. It is about building a life that is strong, meaningful, and resilient. You are responsible for the direction of your own life, the clarity of your thinking, and the pursuit of your highest potential. Chaos, distraction, and fear will always exist, but with courage, honesty, and discipline, they no longer control you. Every choice you make, every habit you form, and every truth you embrace brings you closer to the person you are capable of becoming. Start today, because the moment you confront reality with clarity and action, your life begins to change in ways you may have only imagined. Thank you so much for watching and taking the time to invest in your growth. Your attention, your effort to listen, and your willingness to reflect on this advice is what creates real change. Remember, the journey is yours. Start small, stay consistent, and keep aiming for meaningful progress. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more life-changing guidance. Every action you take today builds the foundation for a stronger, wiser, and more empowered version of yourself. Until next time, stay disciplined, speak the truth, and keep pushing forward. Thank you, and goodbye.